Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So I'm going to mess up his name, although I got it right away. Just like I mentioned in a bunch of my podcasts, just pronouncing people's names, I find it to be the most difficult thing in the podcast oftentimes. So my guest today is Scott Mys.
Nailed
Polish
it.
background and got it right that time. And I actually know Scott through Carnivore Cast. And I want to kind of thank him for being one of the, like, it's been already years since we did it together, but want to thank him for being like one of the people that gave voice to when I wrote my second book. It was the Anti-Factory Farm book, and it's totally under the radar. And I was just really happy that he even helped me out by being a guest on my show because I remember I made it the first time, but I don't think I had much to eat. And I felt kind of lightheaded and I was like stumbling all over the place. I'm like, oh, let's redo it. And he still gave me a second chance. So I appreciate that. And it's good to finally see you because I think last time we just did audio as well. And I never really even got to see you that time. And I want to welcome you to the show. And we have some like cool topics to cover. One of the ones I wanted to start off with, which has been like a long-term passion of mine, and and is sometimes like frowned upon in health circles too. And that's kind of developing or focusing your health and fitness goals on your aesthetics or like bodybuilding,
Mm,
you know? And
yeah.
especially in holistic cultures, they're like, oh, you got like greater and better things to focus on instead of like just improving your looks all the time, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's such a cool pursuit. And especially you can get so much out of it, including just improving your appearance, which you get to enjoy like 24/7, all day, every day. And there's a lot of positive repercussions of that as well. And I was just wondering what your take is, like why you even got into like bodybuilding and what interests you, and then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah. I love how you introduced that, first of all, Eugene, and thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, bodybuilding is it's really, I think, one person I really respect. He's a natural bodybuilder. He's like in his 40s. He's been doing this thing forever. His name is Alberto Nunez. He talks about how bodybuilding is actually the most popular sport because everyone in some way is bodybuilding. It may not be the body you want, but you are bodybuilding. And I think that's really an interesting take. But yeah, for me, I think it evolved. I was an athlete my whole life. And then, after college, where I rode full time on the lightweight rowing team, I was looking for something else, looking for a way to stay healthy and in shape. And for a long time, I didn't love the way I looked. Like I think a lot of people do. I had poor body image. And I'd say, I came on the other side of that a couple years into pursuing, bodybuilding and lifting weights along with at the time a carnivore diet. Um, but it's evolved for me since then a lot. Now for me, I've long been happy with the way I look and kind of divorced myself from that. Now it's more about self improvement and a form of actualization, and something that I think a lot of people get through different means. People get it through running. People get it through a lot of different areas of life. Some people get it through making money or different aspects of work or impact. But for me, in the corporate world, impact and results and progress are often vague and amorphous. And what I love about bodybuilding is you can put in the effort and you can see the results in yourself and you can test yourself. You can push yourself harder. You can try, like, for instance, for me, for the first time, got really lean and did a photo shoot a month or two ago. And that was only for me. People kept asking me, are you submitting these for a competition? What are the photos for? What are you going to use them for? I said, no, it's for me. It's a goal I have. It's something I want to do. And, some people go and run marathons and train for them. For me, I wanted to do this photo shoot. So long answer to your question. But yeah, I see it as a form of progress, seeking progress and self-actualization.
Well, can you go more into the details of merging bodybuilding? And you had like a great physique. I saw the pictures, like amazing photos.
Thank you.
Merging bodybuilding and the I kind of want to say it under a positive light, but like not so health conscious world of the corporate world.
Yeah.
And how you kind of balance the two. Because I found when I was graduating from college personally, I was just super into bodybuilding and just lifting weights and just being athletic and hiking and all that stuff. And I'm like, one of the things that kind of kept me out of the corporate world was just the tough schedule that I saw in a lot of my clients, 40, 50-hour weeks. And then if you get into upper management, it seems like you really have no time off because you're constantly thinking and strategizing mentally about the next project or how to do things more creatively or productively. And I feel it definitely makes it tough, but there are always
Yeah.
exceptions, and you seem to be an exception of making it work in that kind of. Can you, I guess, let's start with maybe what kind of corporate work you do and some challenges you've run into and stuff of that sort. So maybe
Yeah.
people that are also in that environment say like, hey, it is possible if I just really make it a priority and have the right
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah, that's first of all very astute of you recognizing as early as college that the corporate world would be like that, and I think that's very much the case. I'm very fortunate. I don't have like most people a commute into work, a 1 hour commute on each end. That's tough. I don't have children. I don't have a family. I don't have a lot of responsibilities. So, people can always make time, but it's easy for me to say that, as a person with no kids and no commute. It makes life a lot easier. I'll say that. I will say, though, I started my career in management consulting and I was working 90 hours a week and I was traveling every week on the road. And that is an extremely unhealthy profession. People are eating fast food all the time, it's barely sleeping, extremely high stress, constant fire drills, meaning like really urgent, stressful events. And yeah, it's very tough. I'd say I got somewhat, out of health during that time. And then I kind of course corrected with the carnivore diet and some other health pursuits after that. But I still, even during that time, when I did get home from the really stressful weeks, I, I would make a priority on Friday morning, Saturday, Sunday to, you know, have a workout, get lots of walks outside. When I was on the road, I would try to always have one or two hotel workouts in my time away. There's always options whenever you order food, whenever the team is ordering food, to try to find something healthier, to stay away from snacks. Corporate world is a plague when it comes to snack food. It's crazy. It's like, fattening up the cattle for slaughter. They have so many snacks they're pushing in your face all the time. So that can be really tough for people. And I think finding ways to make it your identity at work, say, hey, I'm actually really trying to lose some weight, or I'm really trying to focus on my health and physique, and say that to people a couple times, they'll stop offering you the donuts. And it may feel a little bit uncomfortable, but once you make that like known in a friendly way, not in a like, talking down on people or condescending way, you become that person, and then people identify you, and then it's easier for you to stick to that commitment because it's now your character. Another thing is just like stay away from the areas that are ridden with snack food. I know it's hard sometimes because often the kitchen in a corporate office will be the place you go and get water, or coffee, and that's where all the snacks will be. But try to find ways to work around that. Bringing extra water bottles to just keep at your desk or something like that. But yeah, those are some general tips. For me, I've been very fortunate. I started my career in managed consulting where I was working 90 hours a week. Then I worked in investing where I was working 70 hours a week, and it was very stressful. And, now I work 40 hours a week or so more flexibly from home. I'm able to get my workouts in when I need to during the day, usually, right after work around 5 p.m. And I'm able to cook all my own food. So I'm very fortunate, but I've set up that life for myself, and I found ways to prioritize that in the jobs I've chosen. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of priorities and making things work.
Yeah, and I think remote work is such a huge upgrade. And I encourage a lot of my clients, if they could do it, because it
Yes.
would save you in terms of the commute that you mentioned. I mean, even if it's 30 minutes each way, I mean, that's your workout right there, ready for the day. You
Yep.
got like 1 hour of driving. And then you have to also take into consideration the mental energy it takes to drive there. And then you got to get ready for work, put on some clothes, fix your hair or
Yep.
whatever. all that stuff adds up, and it adds up to quite a bit of hours at the end of the day. Can you describe maybe some ways some people can, stick to their core values and ask to work remote? Because I feel like maybe some people just don't have like the self-esteem you have, to be able to have the
Mm.
courage to ask for that. Although
Yeah.
like it is more flexible these days and more employers are for sure open to that idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
But did you ever think, were you hesitant at first of requesting remote work?
So it was forced on me through the pandemic. The companies I worked for just became remote. And then as I was interviewing, all the companies I interviewed at were fully remote friendly. Um, but I think for people who are not remote today and want to move to remote, there are a few options. One, leave your job, find a company that is remote friendly. That's hard in today's economy and probably isn't the first option. First option is prove to your boss that you can be effective at remote work. Say, hey, I'd like to try working 1 day a week from home. Maybe start with a day that doesn't have many meetings, where it's not as important to be in person, or a day a lot of people take off, like Friday, and say, hey, I'd like to try taking 1 day off a week or every other week and see how it goes. This will allow me to, and don't just say because I want to, say this will allow me to focus on getting deep work done, having some heads down time, removing my commute. And I think it will make me a more productive and effective employee. And then, see how it goes, prove to them over time that it's effective. And then you can ask for more gradually. That's one way to go about it.
I mean, do you feel personally like you're just more productive working from home than the office? I can't imagine the office being a more productive place with like
Yeah.
nobody interrupting you every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And you kind of show up to the office. I mean, you're chatting to people for the first 30 or 40 minutes, then you get in the zone for 2 hours, then it's a lunch break already. And
Yeah.
then it takes
Yeah.
you another hour or two to get in the zone when you get back. You chat a little bit.
Yes.
It's like, dude, in an 8 hour workday, you got like 3 hours of work done, maybe.
Yeah.
That's questionable,
Yeah.
maybe.
I don't think offices are designed for productivity. I think they're more so designed for socialization and meetings. Um, I think it can be helpful. Like for me, for instance, my boss is very busy. He's in meetings all day. If I don't go in, I currently am just starting to go in 1 day a week. And that's beneficial because if I didn't, I would never catch him. Whereas when I'm physically in the office and he's going from meeting to meeting or call to call, at least he'll come back to his desk if a meeting ends early or something like that, and I can talk to him. I can get a quick word in or get his input on something, or we can just connect socially. Build a little bit more of a rapport. Versus if I was working from home, he would have to Slack me when he's available, and then we'd have to jump on a Zoom meeting. It's a little bit more of a barrier. So I do see some benefits of being in person some of the time, but I certainly don't think it's best all the time. And I think companies that mandate in office time is kind of ludicrous and not really progressive in today's society, where it's pretty clear that there's certain people who are just way more productive and happier working from home. And if you're saying people have to be in the office, you're basically losing out on that talent.
Yeah, and I also feel it's like, oh, we don't know if you're working from home. I'm like, well, are they getting the projects done? Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
then they're working from home. I mean, what else do you need
Yeah.
outside? You hired them to do projects. If they're doing the
Yeah.
project with the appropriate quality, what's the problem?
Exactly.
I just don't
If,
understand
if
their argument there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if your company needs people to be working a certain amount of time and not to be getting things done, then there's a problem with the way you've set up your company.
Yeah, it's called like being born in 1940 and not knowing a different business system. I think that might be the main problem. Yeah. Um, but you mentioned one thing in terms of for people that might want to try requesting remote work these days. You mentioned that maybe it's not the right time in terms of the like economy or something of that sort. I don't know your exact words, but can
Yeah.
you elaborate that a little bit more?
Yeah, I didn't mean requesting it. I meant changing jobs just
Oh,
because like the job market right now is pretty tough. At least in tech where I work. There's a lot of companies doing layoffs, a lot of companies with hiring freezes. So just saying leave your job and find another job that is remote friendly, may not be the best option, but definitely if you're within a company, trying to negotiate more remote work, I think is totally feasible.
Yeah, I actually interviewed another guy called Dmitry Arkhipov. He's like a computer programmer guy too, and he's like a huge remote work advocate. And I've never heard a computer programmer be so passionate, on a lot. Like he had like all these things like, oh, they're just trying to control you, by having
That's
you in
funny.
the office. Anyways, just kind of like a joke and stuff of that sort. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of like structure your week? Do you tend to like work out in the morning currently, or like what have you found work better for you?
Yeah, I mean, ideally I would love to work out in the middle of the day when the gym is less busy, but that doesn't really work with my work. I need to be talking to people and having meetings during the middle of the day most of the time. So I typically work out at like 5 p.m. after most work is done. And then I'll work out for, an hour and a half. And then come home. And yeah, so usually I'll wake up, I'll go on a walk with my dog, get sunlight early in the day, come back, wait a little bit, have breakfast, go for another walk, then start work at around like 8:30 or so, 8:30, and then I'll work until lunch. I'll have a quick meal, walk my dog for a longer walk, get a lot of sunlight at lunchtime, and then I'll go to the gym, come back, have a meal, and maybe do some work and settle down for the night.
How do you have enough energy to work out towards later in the night? I always kind of struggle with that one. I was always like a morning or
Yeah.
midday kind of person. I feel at night, especially like on leg days, man, just like don't really enjoy life too much.
Yeah, I think it's a lot less draining when you're working from home and like doing everything at a desk. Definitely when I was like going into the office every day, I was just like mentally exhausted. And yeah, going and doing a hard leg day was really difficult at that point. And actually, when I did work in an office full time, I worked out in the mornings. I did early morning workouts, and that worked really well because then I just could chill all day and then stay as late as I needed to, and then go home. And I knew I was done. Um, but yeah, it's worked for me pretty well.
I feel like in terms of you mentioned going into the office being a bit more draining. Of course, there's the aspect of traveling there that takes a bit of time. And a lot of people
Yeah,
don't know, but driving is actually pretty tough on the central nervous system. And
yeah,
it has to be really amped up for you to stay in the lanes and look out for the
mm,
traffic and all that stuff.
yeah,
One of the things that's really draining, at least from what I hear from my clients, is oftentimes the social politics of office work, in-person work in particular, and the different personality types. It's like you have to, work this way with this person and kind of speak this way with this person, et cetera, et cetera. Did you find that to be the case with you as well?
yeah, definitely that. And also, roughly half of the people on earth are introverts. They're overstimulated in an office. There's bright lights, there's a lot of people talking, noise, that can drain you. If you're a very extroverted person, maybe that gives you energy. But for introverts like myself, that is definitely draining. So but yeah, office politics, absolutely. The bureaucracy, that can be very draining. I've left jobs because of that.
Well, how does your diet look currently?
Yeah, so I was strict carnivore, meat only for 3 years, from 2016 to 2019. And then I was having trouble maintaining my weight, and um, my digestion was poor with large amounts of fat. And I tried a lot of different things. I tried different sources of fat, solid fat versus rendered fats. I tried different meal timings, manipulating water, digestive enzymes, and I consistently found that I couldn't tolerate more than about 150 grams of fat a day. Um, and the problem was I needed over 4,000 calories a day just to maintain my weight. So if you can only eat, 100 to 150 grams of fat, that's, about 1,000 calories. That means you need to get 3,000 calories from protein if you're not eating any carbs, which is a lot of protein. Um, And I'm definitely an advocate of high protein diets. I think it's great, but at a certain point, having that much protein can have some negative side effects. I had to pee all the time. And so so then I would need to try to eat more fat. But when I did, I would inevitably have this belching and really bad gas in the middle of the night, far away from my meals, like 8 hours after my last meal. And so I tried all these things, nothing seemed to work. And so some experts I was consulting with recommended I try reintroducing some carbohydrates. Um, and I basically followed the food reintroduction method from the Whole30 diet, which is you take one food, not a food group, but a food. So like a banana, and you have one serving of it once a day for 3 days in a row. And then you write down, how do you feel? How's your digestion? Um, how's your hunger? And some other things. And then you go back to your baseline diet, for which for me was an all meat carnivore diet for a day. And then if it's good, you can add that food back in, and you go through this process with tons of foods. It takes a very long time, but you learn a lot about which foods you tolerate and don't. So I was able to find that a lot of the foods I couldn't tolerate before doing a carnivore diet, I could now, for one, which was cool. And two, it wasn't like all vegetables I couldn't tolerate. It was some I could tolerate very well and some I couldn't. Like broccoli and cauliflower and onions, definitely couldn't tolerate. But zucchini and some other foods, I was just fine with. And so slowly, gradually, I added back in more carbohydrates, berries, white rice, some yogurt, Greek yogurt, and I've done very well with that. And now I'm eating a much wider variety of foods. I'd say 90% of my diet is still white rice or white rice flour, fruit, and meat. But yeah, that's working really well for me. And my goals have also changed. Now I want to put on weight, I want to bodybuild. And so that's more conducive to my goals.
I'm sorry if you mentioned this actually in the beginning, but did you lean towards the carnivore diet because of digestive issues? Was
Yeah,
that
it was a few things. One, it was digestive issues. Two, it was just wanting to improve my body composition. Um, and I was just curiosity. I was already following, I sort of progressed from 2014 to 2016 from a paleo to a primal diet, following kind of Mark Sisson, to what was basically a keto diet before keto was really mainstream. And then I heard Amber O'Hearn and on Two Keto Dudes, the podcast, and she was talking about how a lot of the research that vilifies red meat and saturated fat and cholesterol from eggs is the same epidemiological research that puts plants and vegetables and fruits on a pedestal. And so I said, that's really interesting. And I was already eating like a pretty protein heavy, meat heavy keto diet. I wasn't like tracking my protein. But yeah, I just said I'll drop the little bit of extra avocado and nuts and occasional spinach I'm eating and cheese, and I'll just try eating as much meat as I want. And that's kind of how it began.
well, first, have you ever heard of this thing called a GI map?
Yes, I've
Have
done
you
it.
have you ever had that? I try to have that done once a year, and I find it so useful. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
ever done yourself.
Yeah, I did it a long time ago.
Oh, okay, did you find it helpful at all, or?
Yeah, I did it with Dr. Paul Saladino. He read it out to me and gave me some advice based on it.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I had like good experience with that for anyone that has any digestive
Cool.
issues on this show. It does provide you with cool, like objective insight on what's going on in your gut. That way you
Yeah.
can be a bit more precise with your strategy of what you need to do and stuff of
Mhm.
that sort. Do you kind of I try to be really like strict and regimented with like my macros and tracking everything, but I know a lot of people discourage that. But ironically, a lot of people that do discourage that, I feel they don't have good physiques. Yeah, I don't know. And then the people that do encourage tracking everything and measuring stuff, like they have great physiques. Of course, there are
Yeah.
many variables that go into that. Obviously, that's not the only variable. But are you currently like tracking, or are you just winging it and kind of being more intuitive?
So I track, but I don't track every day because I eat mostly the same thing every day. And so once I figured it out, like I'm eating the same thing every day, so I don't need to track it, you know. Um, but I do use like a food scale for like some things like fat or meats, and like measuring my rice out. But it's like so second nature to me. It's not like, oh my gosh, you know, what macros do I have left? I'm not going in and doing that every day. It's more so just like, okay, these are all the foods I'm going to eat today. You know, I know I need to make all my rice at the beginning of the day. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Do you have any good like time economical tips of how to make your meals really quick, or anything that's worked for you to kind of save you quite a bit of time? Because I know if you do that part wrong, it could take like forever all week to get all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say like the really simple thing is like cook in bulk. I think cooking meats in a pan on the stovetop is underrated. Too many people are like, I need to get a tray out. I need to preheat the oven. I need to, you know, make sure I clean the like just put a pan on the stove and throw your chicken in the pan or whatever you're making. Throw your beef in the pan. It's so simple. um, I'd say another thing is like uh some people aren't super fans of microwaves, but I microwave my vegetables. That's really easy. You can just like cut up a zucchini, I slice it, put it in a bowl, stick it in the microwave for a minute and a half, done. Like that's a serving of vegetables. Um, Same with fruit. Like I buy all my fruit frozen. Frozen fruit is cheaper, it's fresher, and it's doesn't go bad. So that's a huge savings. You can buy it in bulk. You can buy a ton of it. Um, and then if you're going to have like a carb source like me, I have rice. I just bulk cook my I actually use white rice flour on Amazon. It's basically cream of rice without like the added iron or you know, they fortify both rice and cream of rice with a lot of stuff you don't necessarily want. So I just buy white rice flour, super cheap, and I'll like just basically bulk make it by heating up an electric kettle and then putting a bunch of white rice flour in a giant mixing bowl like this one and just pour it in and stir it. That's it. I didn't have to like cook rice on the stovetop. It's just super simple. So just the the broader take home point is just like find ways to make it really easy for you to cook a lot of food. And if you're like me, you don't really care that much about how your food tastes, especially during the week when you're like trying to work and do things. Just try to set up systems that are repeatable and easy, and you can kind of make it go on autopilot. And then, you know, if you want to cook a nice meal with your significant other or friend over the weekend or on a night you have more time, that's great. But yeah, just try to make it easy for yourself.
Yeah, and that's another plus of working remote is you could throw it all in the fridge and you don't have to pack it up and then take it with you with your lunchbox into work. It's
Yeah.
just another thing, and you could just like
Yeah.
it's ready to eat. You just go there, it's ready. It's in like some Tupperware. Throw it in the air fryer or whatever. Heat it up really quick. Boom, eat it. Maybe even while continuing your work, and then boom,
Yeah.
continue. So another reason for the oldies out there that remote works great. Shouldn't
Yeah,
discourage people from working there.
for sure. But I went into the office yesterday and I brought two meals with me and it was totally easy. Wasn't a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when it's a priority, the person will make it happen, you know. But I
Yeah.
guess like the fewer obstacles, the better. You know, you could of course climb Mount Everest, but walking at the park would probably be easier, you know. but,
Yeah.
but
Good saying.
uh,
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Well, first of all, going back to the carnivore diet, I was just curious, like, we're like 100% carnivore. Like, I feel like on that diet, like, I would just not be able to maintain my size, like, at all. And I'm like only around like 200 pounds as well at like 6'2", so
Yeah.
like that big. I'm just wondering your experience with that, if you're able to um like maintain size or even really like gain significant amount of size on that, even if
Yeah. So
calories.
I, yeah, so I did over the course of the three, I was much smaller then. So when I started the carnivore diet, I was like 165 pounds. And I actually did DEXA scan, which measures your body fat for those listening who don't know. And I was 20% body fat. And you wouldn't think it looking at me. I was basically like just super skinny and had a lot of body fat. I also had below osteoporotic levels of bone mass.
Hmm.
So I had 3 Z scores below the mean bone mass. So actually, that took me down a whole journey of looking into my hormones and eventually, years later, starting testosterone replacement therapy. But over the course of 3 years, I had DEXA done at that same place. And I was like 165 pounds, but I had gained, or I was like 170 something. I had gained 28 pounds of lean mass and lost 18 pounds of fat. So I was able to build muscle, build lean mass, and lose fat while on the carnivore diet. Does that mean it's optimal? No, I don't think so. But certainly, now at my current weight, like 210 pounds, I definitely don't think I could maintain this eating carnivore. Like I said, that's the problem I ran into at the end is I couldn't get enough food in.
Do you feel like with a lot of people, they grossly underestimate like how much food you really need to maintain like a muscular physique? Because I feel like that's
Yes.
oftentimes like, man, people would be like astonished like how much food you honestly need to be
Yeah.
muscular and even just work out like 5 days a week and have like
Yeah.
a sedentary job. Moreover, like imagine being a construction worker and lifting 5 days a week on top of that.
Oh God. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy how much NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, plays a role in your caloric needs. Um, I'd also say that I think people grossly overestimate how much they're eating on a carnivore diet, how many calories they're eating. People say like, oh, I'm losing weight eating 4,000 calories a day on a carnivore diet. I doubt it. A lot of times they're cooking their meat and a lot of fat comes out in the cooking process.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of calories. And I think people think like, oh, I'm eating just as much as I was before. I'm eating more calories than I was before. But in actuality, they're eating far less calories when they switch to carnivore.
Yeah, and then on top of that, the metabolism of that food also decreases the energy quantity of that food as
Yeah.
well. You got to kind of
Yeah.
factor that into it.
Yeah. A
Um,
lot of protein.
do you find like in your bodybuilding journey, like the online space to be more of a hindrance than an aid? Like when you're looking for advice and like an honest path to go on, I feel it's like
Mm.
maybe it would have been like super helpful like 15 years ago, but I feel these days it's like people are just saying like stupid stuff just to stand
Yeah.
out that they've never personally done consistently or that
Yeah.
just to stand out somehow.
Yeah, there's a lot of BS and gimmicks out there in, places like TikTok. I think you really have to sift through to find the useful information. I do still think there is a lot of useful information out there, but, it's probably 1% or less than 1% of all the available information on fitness and bodybuilding.
Well, do you have any sources that you feel were credible and great on your journey that you found helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. I think uh Team 3DMJ,
Hmm.
the number three, the letter D, and then M and J. They have fantastic content on muscle building. The one of the members there, Dr. Eric Helms, he's a very well respected researcher in the exercise science community, and he's the author of two books, The Muscle and Strength Pyramids, which are fantastic resources. Pretty much you read those, you know everything you need to know, for the most part, or like 80 to 90% about bodybuilding or just improving the way you look, lifting. I think Renaissance periodization for to like YouTube, you can just, it's hard to type that out, but if you misspell it, you just type YouTube, a lot of videos will come up. They have fantastic free education resources. And I'm sure there are a lot more that I'm forgetting, but those are two of the great sources I think everyone could check out and learn a lot from. And they both have podcasts as well.
What kind of split have you found to work well for you in terms of your workouts?
Yeah, I think I've tried pretty much everything from full body to body part splits. What I keep going back to inevitably is like an upper lower type of split. Um, just works really well for me. I find like with a push pull leg split, inevitably some of the days are just like way too easy. Like a pull day where you're doing a bunch of pull downs and rows and some biceps and maybe some delts is like 1,000 times easier than a hard leg day. Um, and I also, if you just look at the total mass on your body, like you might think your chest is a big body part or your back is a big body part, but the actual volume, Menno Henselman's, that's another great source, by the way, for folks who want to learn about bodybuilding. Menno Henselman's, he has an awesome article on like what are the size of muscles, and uses this data to show you like what is the relative size of all the muscles on your body. It's really cool. Muscles that you think are really big, like your chest, are actually smaller than muscles that you think are small, like your delts, your shoulders. And so the point being, like your lower body mass, your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings, your calves are huge. Those make up way more volume than your upper body mass. And so saying like a push pull leg split, you're basically saying, I'm going to train, 70% of my body mass on one day and then 15% on another day and 15% on another. It doesn't really make any sense. So I think upper lower makes more sense for me. I found it to works better with like the time of the workouts, the difficulty of the workouts. But, I think at the end of the day, training split is just a way to organize the amount of volume you need to do across the course of a week, or it could be another time period too. Week is arbitrary. And so whatever works well for you to be able to organize that.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people miss too is understanding the importance of progressive overload and a well thought periodization program to help initiate that with
Mm-hmm.
enough rest and recovery to allow biological adaptation as well.
Yep.
Because I feel one of the biggest mistakes a lot of people make is they just go on YouTube and they might see a credible person like Dorian Yates, for example. Here's my week split. But okay, like how does that week fit into the month? And how does that month fit into the quarter of the year? How does that
Yep.
quarter fit into the year? And where's the bigger goal here, and
Mm.
stuff of
Yep.
that sort. And I feel that's like greatly overlooked and people do invest a lot of time. And you see a lot of people go to the gym like 5 days a week. You see them there all the time. But they just look the same, like year after
Yep.
year after year. And of course,
Yeah.
it's more than just your workouts. It's kind of like your lifestyle, how you go through your lifestyle and your nutrition and your personal relationships and inner relationship with yourself, and all that stuff plays into the bigger picture, of course. But
Definitely.
um,
I
I
think another thing that's on along those lines that's super undervalued is how you lift weights.
mhm.
A lot of people go into the gym and they're just trying to lift as much weight as possible. But what is your goal? Are you trying to show off for the other people in the gym? Or are you trying to grow muscle or improve your body composition? Because if that's your goal, you should be slowing the heck down, especially on the eccentric phase,
Mhm.
lowering the weight. Should be controlling the weight. The goal is to tax your muscles, not to lift as much weight as possible.
Yeah, and not just tax your joints the whole entire workout. I find also it's just so important to have that continuous tension in the targeted muscle group during the entire set as well. Like every single millimeter on the way down, even at the bottom, every single millimeter at the way up. Because I feel like when you don't keep that tension in your muscle, just the workout isn't as intense. I feel not
Yeah.
intensity measured in terms of weight, but also it's just where is all that pressure going to go? It's just going to go to your joints then,
Yeah.
you
You're
know?
way more likely to injure yourself. I see people putting 20 plates on the leg press and slamming it up and down, or doing only the quarter of the range of motion. You're going to kill your knees. You could do 1/3 the weight and slow it down and go full range of motion, really deep stretch, get a way better stimulus, not injure yourself, and you wouldn't have to load as many plates on it either.
Do you believe in like full range of motion? Full range of motion in the sense of being able to keep the tension in the targeted muscle group and past that range of motion, just to not actually go past that range of motion. And if it's very limited, then it might be a flexibility issue or just a strength issue at a certain point. But you,
Yeah, I think also, so there's an argument some people make around like active versus passive range of motion, and saying like you shouldn't lift the weight to a point where you couldn't get without the weight. I don't necessarily agree with that logic. I think if you're doing, let's say, a squat, a squat is a bad example. Let's say you're doing a leg press, and you can only get your knees to your chest without your back rounding a certain amount. But if you put weight on the leg press and you're doing the set, especially as you do, a few warm-ups, you find you can get deeper, and it's almost stretching you into a position. As long as, your lower back isn't rounding, or you're not getting in a disadvantaged position where you're recruiting some part of your body that you shouldn't be, I think it's okay for the weight to stretch you into a deeper position to a certain extent. Obviously, you have to be careful with that, because it can lead to, your lower back rounding, injury, things like that. But I do think getting the deepest range of motion you can, with good form, with control, I think that's what I advocate and what I strive for.
do you still incorporate like a lot of squats and deadlifts into your routine?
I only do Romanian deadlifts, and I do them with dumbbells, and I do them like with a pause, very slow. And I do that just because it's a really good hamstring exercise. I don't do like barbell deadlifts or deadlifts from the floor at all. I don't think that's a very good exercise for hypertrophy, just
Mm-hmm.
because um, it's not really taxing any one muscle very well. It's
Yeah.
basically like a half-ass movement for a bunch of muscles. um, and then squats. I do either machine hack squats,
Mm-hmm.
or I like doing squats in the Smith machine. My body is very well suited to squatting. I have really short legs, long torso, good hip mobility. So I get a lot out of squatting personally, but some people don't. So it kind of just depends on what works for you.
Yeah, I guess it's that whole argument of like, your central nervous system could only attend to so much. So when you're deadlifting, it's pretty much flexing freaking everything all at one time,
Yeah.
versus like the isolation philosophy, like targeting just, I mean, you're never targeting just one muscle group, but the idea
Yeah.
is get the predominantly one muscle group targeted. I just find like when I personally took out deadlifts, I haven't done them in a long time. I didn't see a size reduction,
Yeah.
I just didn't feel so exhausted during the week. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
like I had like way more energy when I just took out like 5 sets of deadlifts, like once per week. I wasn't even doing
Yeah.
them multiple times a week. Um, and I don't know. I just feel like people get those lifts are so technical. I just don't think the average person without any coaching should even be doing back squats or front squats or
Yeah.
deadlift without
Yeah.
getting some solid coaching under their belt.
I agree.
And I mean, on top of that, with the amount like people sit and their postural problems and stuff, I mean, the problems compound pretty
For sure.
crazy. Um, well, are you okay with talking about like TRT and your experience
Yeah.
with that? Because I know other
Absolutely.
people has been more popularized these days for sure.
Totally.
Um, you can just go ahead and just say whatever you're comfortable with, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
way
Absolutely.
take the
I'm
safe
an
path,
open book.
because I find uh, people might not be able to do it safely sometimes if they're not careful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say, like, first and foremost, going on testosterone replacement therapy is a very serious decision. Do not take it lightly. Don't jump into it. Don't buy some testosterone on the internet and try it out. Don't go to some doctor who barely talks to you and puts you on a cookie cutter regimen. Like, do your research, do your homework, take it very seriously. My journey with TRT, like I said, when I was about 22, 23, 24, I found out that I had extremely low bone density for my age, dangerously low levels of bone. And so I went to some endocrinologists, and turns out my estrogen was non-existent, which you need for bone mass. That's a big reason that women post-menopause develop osteoporosis, because they don't have enough estrogen. It's important for men too. And I also had very low testosterone. My readings were consistently, and that's another important thing. Don't go off on reading, because it changes during the day. It changes from a bad night of sleep, changes for a million reasons. Test, retest. My testosterone levels for a year were consistently 100 nanograms per deciliter, which is like female levels. Normal for a man, normal of any age, is 350 to about 850, 900, depending on the scale. And so that was low. I wasn't experiencing too many other symptoms, excuse me. My sex drive was normal, all that. My motivation and my drive was pretty good. Okay, I would say. My affect was very flat. And so people would say, Scott, you never smile. And that's definitely a symptom of low testosterone.
I thought that was a symptom of being Eastern European.
That too, a serious Russian Polish guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I consulted with several different endocrinologists. Some had no idea what they were talking about. I found that out pretty quickly because I had done a lot of my own research. And after about a year of working with endocrinologists, I decided I was going to make the lifelong commitment of going on TRT. Now, you can come off TRT, you can restore your natural, but I would argue that's an unhealthy process, and it's dangerous, and you probably don't want to do it. So I went on TRT saying, this is going to be something I do for the rest of my life. This is going to me vitality. Ultimately, being below the normal range for testosterone is really unhealthy. It's arguably less healthy than being above the normal range, being super physiological. And so this is something that I knew was going to improve my health, was going to help me with my bone mass, a lot of things. And so I said, okay, I'm doing this. And I found a great doctor, a doctor that didn't put me on a cookie cutter regime, started me on a very low dose, saw how I responded, helped me manage side effects or anything that I didn't understand. And they do blood work every 2 to 3 months. So very regular blood work, monitor everything, make sure you're staying healthy, you're doing it the right way. And yeah, that's been my experience. I started in 2017, so I'm coming up on 6 years on TRT. It's been pretty life-changing for me. Really helped me with my affect, with my drive, with my recovery from workouts, my performance in the gym. And I think it's something that's often spoken about as taboo. Like, someone will see someone on the internet and see their fitness results, and they'll say, oh, but are you on TRT? As if that's an excuse for why they can't achieve what that person has achieved. But TRT, the R is replacement. So you're supposed to be replacing your natural levels. So, I mean, yes, you can theoretically take a little bit more, or, someone on TRT may be slightly advantaged to someone of the same level without TRT, just because you don't have the fluctuations. When you're injecting it, you always have a constant level of testosterone. But theoretically, someone on TRT should be on equal footing. Not that I think that matters at all, as someone who's natural, if they're doing it the right way. And so to say like, oh, but is Sean Baker on TRT? Like, first of all, who cares? That is his decision. That is his life. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I think no one should care what anyone is using, any drug, really, unless they're trying to sell you something and say, I did this because of this program or because of this nutrition plan or because of this diet pill. Then I have a problem with it. But I think anyone should be allowed to do whatever they want with their body. And I think TRT is something that's very healthy and should be done with caution. But I don't think it's something that I see as like morally wrong or cheating or anything like that. Like it's something that can be life-saving for people. So yeah, that was my long rant. Happy to answer any questions you have.
No, no problem. I actually, obviously, this is like a semi joke, but I just think the standard American diet is more harmful for your visceral tissue than any amount of TRT you probably do. I don't
Yeah.
know if it's really that true, but I mean, just look at the state of 9 out of 10 Americans metabolically unhealthy now. It's like every time you walk outside, you see like pretty much 9 out of 10 again Americans like super overweight, and don't realize like, dude, that's like super unhealthy for you in a myriad of ways, directly and indirectly, for your
Yeah.
self-esteem as well. And they're like, oh, this guy's unhealthy because he's doing like TRT.
Yeah.
Although like literally like your blood works fine and your whole entire diet is like basically a whole food diet and maybe some processed protein
Yeah.
at most.
No,
Uh,
TRT on the whole improves health outcomes, basically more effective than metformin for diabetes. It's promotes it basically good for your health in almost every way. There are some side effects, and some people have negative reactions in terms of prostate and things like that. But for the vast majority of people, it helps them live longer and better. So yeah, I'd say it's definitely health promoting on the whole. Taking anabolic steroids and taking excessive amounts of testosterone, that's something else. And I would still argue that drinking alcohol is probably worse than that, in terms of like liver damage and stuff like that. But that's a whole other discussion, I think. But TRT is something that should be looked on as healthy and a good thing.
yeah, and for the listeners, take note that Scott's working out and eating healthy and doing a myriad of other things in terms of doing a lot of continued education on a variety of health topics, mental and physical health topics. I feel a lot of times people take TRT thinking it's going to just do all the work for them. And they're already like not sleeping well, not working out, like not on a good program. Their diet sucks. They know nothing about nutrition. I like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure you've hired a bunch of coaches to help fast track the process for this is key, guys, because you can't come up with a solution with the same belief system that led to the problem. Is that you need a third person to kind of look at your progress and kind of give you better guidance and stuff of that sort. So I feel like TRT maybe has like a slightly bad rap because a lot of people do take it in the sense that they really think they don't have to fix all of the stuff that led to the low testosterone. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where that's really where the magic happens. Because at the end of the day, it's like the goal is to be like happy at least most days during the week. And
Yeah.
you're going to have to fix all the stuff that led to a low testosterone level and stuff of that sort. I
Yeah.
know we're kind of running out of time here. Quick question, and I know sometimes it's basically impossible. It just becomes hypothetical, really. But have you ever tried to get to the etiology of why you develop such a low testosterone level? I know you mentioned the
Yeah, I did. So I had like a pituitary scan and stuff like that, and I'm not sure that didn't show anything direct cause of hypogonadism, which is when your testes aren't producing testosterone properly. I think it may be a couple things. One is chronic cutting and basically yo-yo dieting while doing chronic cardio. Basically, for 8 years during lightweight rowing, I was crash dieting and under eating and exercising 4 to 6 hours a day. So that can affect your hormones. Another thing is for the last 3 years, I was competitively lightweight rowing. I was taking NSAIDs every day. So I was taking Aleve, which has been shown to, all NSAIDs have been shown to disrupt your endocrine system, your hormone system. So it could be those things, or it could just be something that happened when I was young. Maybe I was, a fall. There were a couple times where I had bad falls, or a fight or something like that may have disrupted my testes or hormone production, but not exactly sure what it was.
Got it. Okay. Well, damn, Scott, I wish I could talk to you more about this. I know you have like a wealth of knowledge just from personal experience and going on like an honest health journey by yourself. And I like inviting a lot of people that have done it honestly. And it's not easy. It's not an easy path, and it's a long path. But I appreciate hearing your story. And honestly, you're welcome to come back on. Maybe we can have a longer discussion next time and stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you, Eugene. It's a pleasure talking to you. I have a ton to learn from you. I loved having you on my podcast. And yeah, you're a great interview. It's easy to talk to you. So thank you very much.
So thank you. And thanks for everyone for jumping on. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.